When we think about the British monarchy, we often say, don't we, that the thing is they're not allowed to advertise anything. I mean, Catherine looks fabulous in all of those frocks. And I mean that nicely, closed, fashion, whatever you call it. I just call it frocks. But the thing is, she's not allowed to Instagram it and say, today I was wearing, it's down to somebody else to find that and put that out there. And of course, there's very clever people who know instantly. I don't know how they do this, but the shoes, the bag, the earrings, I mean, how do they know this stuff? I've got no idea. I sometimes see Prince Charles's ties, or should I say King Charles's ties, and I think, gosh, that's a terrific tie. I wonder where he got that. I wouldn't know how to source it, would you? No idea. I think he's quite a dapper dresser, to be honest with you. Very nice sunglasses, sir, by the way. I like them, yes. But you see, way back, the British monarchy, as I said, well, it was a different time, and you had to be very careful, in fact, what you associated yourself with. If you cast your mind back to the 1930s, we'd just come out of the debacle that was Wallace and Edward, and whatever people think, they were very much associating themselves with big brands, particularly if they were on ocean liners. They made sure they stood by them, making sure that their passage was free, and consequently the cigarettes that were placed in front of him on a table on the dining car, you get the picture. They get round it one way or another, and in particular cast your mind right back to, say, King Edward VII. His mistress, Lily Langtry, was billed as the king's mistress. Can you imagine? I mean, that now being put outside a theatre as a lure to get you in. And as I said to you before, and I think in a previous video, she wasn't exactly the most brilliant of actresses, but what she was famous or infamous, Now, cast your mind back, say, to 1930s, and just ahead of their coronation, which was, of course, George and Elizabeth. Well, they were kind of seen as the modern era. I mean, it's strange to think, isn't it, when you look at it like that now? But they really were. They'd come out of the Roaring Twenties, and by no default of theirs, they were suddenly becoming, of course, king and queen. Now, the story, as we all know, well, basically, George had a tough time acclimatizing to this particular line of work. Not because he didn't want to serve this country, but because he hadn't anticipated it. And we've all seen the King's speech. But here's one thing that I think they should have done that they really must have regretted when you think. Because way back in February in 1938 at the Dominion Theatre, well, there was this particular exciting thing happening. Let me explain. Now, in February 1938, the Dominion Theatre in London gave the first public experimental demonstration of Bard's colour television on a beggar screen, 12 foot by 9 foot. Transmitted from Crystal Palace, the short programme consisted of simply fashion plates and a cartoon. But as I said, could have been so much more. When you think also, you see, what they wanted was the forthcoming king and queen to appear and give a simple message, Now, you've got to remember that they were used to the cameras. This had all started really around the time of Queen Victoria, who very graciously let in a camera to film, of course, her diamond, I think, Jubilee. And so consequently, there were lots of interest there. And then obviously Edward VII, as I told you before previously, knew exactly the power of having movie-tone cameras following his every move, not just here, but around the world. But you see, even though they liked the idea, the way it was sold to the royals was simply that actually this would never really take off. Television wouldn't take off, and in particular, colour television. And so this wonderful opportunity to have the, forthcoming king and queen, even just being filmed in colour inside, say, Buckingham Palace or in the grounds, well, no, it wasn't allowed, and they weren't going to do it, and the people around them. And I often think, when you look at that, go back, of course, to His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, who literally then had a battle on his hands, not just with, of course, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, as we knew her, but also Queen Mary, about having, for instance, the coronation filmed for the very first time live by BBC TV cameras. He was right, and it's all thanks to him that we're able to look back on that. This could have been far earlier, but the power of the courtiers, the court inside the royal households of that time, basically said that this wouldn't be the right thing to do. And when you also consider this, the reason why apparently Queen Elizabeth wanted to go along with it, she felt this was a great way of connecting, with her subjects, the audience, the people. You've got to remember, the Dominion had only been open since 1929 and was considered one of those Art Deco wonderful places of entertainment. To have yourself projected on a big screen would have been, well, pretty great PR. And they knew right then, as the Queen Mother did in later life, that PR literally was everything. But it simply wasn't to be. What a wonderful missed opportunity. But can you imagine being in that theatre, right, with that huge big screen and seeing colour television live beaming back into that theatre for the first time? Apparently sources said this could be problems for the theatre in years to come. How right they were. By the 50s, many of the theatres were wiped away. Thankfully, not the still beautiful Dominion Theatre just off Tottenham Court Road. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.